Okay, let's talk about zooms and prime lenses. What's the difference? What should you use? What are the pros, the cons? I feel like lots of people are trying to decide between using one or the other. Seems like quite a split opinion as to what people prefer, but I'm going to talk about what I prefer and why I recently switched from one to the other. Let's get into it. If you're not familiar with the difference between prime lenses and zoom lenses, here's a really quick breakdown. Zoom lenses are lenses that you can zoom in and out. It's kind of in the name. You can have a wider field of view and then zoom in to a more narrow field of view. Whereas a prime lens, you don't have that ability. You can't zoom in and out, you just have the one fixed field of view. But which one should you choose? What's better and what are the pros and cons? Before I talk about the pros and cons and reasons to choose one over the other, it's got to be said that there's no real winner out of zooms and primes. It is all down to personal preference, but there are reasons to choose one over the other that may benefit you in your use case. Okay, reasons to choose your zoom lenses over your prime lenses. The first one's pretty obvious, but it is that versatility. You have the ability to zoom in and out in an instant. You have a range of focal lengths, so you can go from 24 to 70 millimeters in just a second. You don't have to change your lenses, you don't have to go through the whole process, it's just there at your fingertips. Which I think that added versatility gives you so many more options to kind of be creative. It's significantly more convenient. And I think that's one of the biggest factors when it comes to zoom lenses. It's that convenience factor. You don't have to keep changing lenses every time you want a different length of shot. And that's one of the biggest swaying points, I think, when it comes to primes over zooms. But we'll get more into that later. The nature of a zoom lens gives you all the different focal lengths between the two set focal lengths. So for example, in a 16 to 35, you have every single focal length between 16 and 35, 16, 17, 18, all the way up. That's something you can't really get with your prime lenses as they come in set different focal lengths. You're not really likely to find a 17mm prime lens or a 32mm prime lens. It just doesn't exist as much because they're kind of more set to the standard 35, 85, 24, 12, 70, whatever it may be. And then you've got less weight in your bag. Well, in theory, if you're taking zoom lenses, you'll need less lenses to cover the same focal lengths as you would need in primes, which again, in theory, would be lighter. In my experience, if I take a zoom lens, I'm only going to need one or maybe two lenses, which definitely makes my bag a lot lighter. Okay, so why would I choose a prime over a zoom then? Like, what's the added value when I can't zoom in and out? Well, there are actually quite a lot of reasons to choose a prime over a zoom. Firstly, prime lenses tend to have a much wider maximum aperture. Lots of the best grade zoom lenses have a maximum aperture of around 2.8, whereas some of the best prime lenses can go all the way down to 1.2. That's a massive advantage when it comes to low light performance. Prime lenses that have a much wider aperture allow you to get so much more light into the lens. It can be up to 1 to 2 stops more light, which when it comes to shooting in dark scenarios or in those scenarios where you need a lot of background blur, then a prime lens is just a much better choice. One that's a little bit more opinionated is that I think primes are better for beginners. It really forces you to get creative when you don't have the option to zoom in and out. It definitely gets you to move your feet a lot more rather than kind of staying in one position and then taking one photo, zooming, taking another, and not really exploring the different possibilities you have with one focal length. Because I feel like lots of people just stay in one spot and they just shoot, zoom, shoot, zoom. I don't think it's a great habit to get into. Prime lenses do tend to be a little bit lighter. Of course, this does depend on what quality of lens it is and what's it made of, but because they don't have any movement mechanisms in them, they do tend to be a little bit lighter, which again could be an advantage if you need to have more of them in your bag. Prime lenses can be relatively more affordable than zoom lenses. You do get some relatively cheaper lenses like the 50mm f1.8. Pretty much every camera brand has a super cheap 50mm lens. I think the Sony one's only around £150, which to be honest is an absolute steal. If you're on a budget, maybe some prime lenses would be a better place to start than zoom lenses simply because you can get more for your money. Okay, so I mentioned I made a switch, and that is very much the case. I made a switch from prime lenses to trying out zoom lenses. The main reason I've swapped over from using those prime lenses, which I absolutely love, to using this zoom lens from Sigma, which is the 28-70 f2.8 contemporary, is simply the convenience factor. When you're making videos, you often need to get a wide range of different shots. It can be a real hassle to keep changing your lenses, especially when you're out in public. You've got to take your bag off, get your one lens off, you don't want to get dust on the sensor, you've got to swap it around. It's generally a really slow process, which can be really frustrating when you just need one really quick shot. You might call me a little bit lazy, but it's those kind of things that stop you from making better videos. I'd rather have the convenience factor to get those shots that I really want, rather than having that extra couple of stops of light. Well, to be honest with you, it is an experimental phase for me. I have really enjoyed using primes, and I think they're amazing for photography. If you're a photographer, out and out photographer, I think I'd recommend primes over zooms. Especially when there are so many different photographers out there, just getting your own creative spin on things can be really good. So I think prime lenses for photography, absolutely. But for video, I think I recommend your zoom lenses. There's less a need for that kind of 1.4 aperture. It does look nice, it gives you a nice bokeh, but this is f2.8 and I don't think it looks bad at all. I've been really impressed with this lens and I do plan to be making a review on it pretty shortly. However, the biggest conclusion you can make from this is you've got to go with whatever suits you best. When it comes to lenses, like I said in the beginning, there is no better or worse. It's not like someone's gonna only work with you because you use prime lenses, or only gonna like your photos because you only use zoom lenses. It really just comes down to what suits you best. For me right now, I think zoom lenses, when I'm going more into my video side of things, is really going to be more beneficial for me. That convenience factor to be able to change focal lengths quickly and not have to carry about tons of lenses and deal with all the hassle, it's just a better option for me right now. But I'd love to hear what your setups are like. What do you prefer? Are you a prime person or a zoom person, or do you use both? Of course, I'd love to have both, but that just isn't affordable in any way, shape or form. Let me know what you're using. I'd love to hear about it. That's all for today. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for the support on the channel recently. It has been amazing. I really honestly appreciate all of your comments, likes, subscriptions and all that stuff. It really does mean a lot. Thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you next week.